Proceed with countdown.
199.
98.
97.
96.
95.
94.
93.
92.
91.
90.
89.
88.
87.
86.
85.
84.
83.
82.
81.
80.
79.
78.
77.
76.
74.
73. 72.
71.
70.
69.
68. 67.
66.
65.
64.
63.
62.
61.
60.
59.
58.
57.
56.
55.
54.
53.
52.
51.
50.
49.
48.
47. 46.
45.
44.
43.
42.
41.
40.
39.
38.
37.
I'm 36.
35.
34.
33.
32.
31.
30.
29.
27.
26.
25.
24.
23.
22.
21. 20 seconds.
19.
17.
16.
15.
14.
13. 12. 11. 10.
9.
8.
7. 6.
5. 4. 3. 2. 1. 0.
We now return to Spengler and the real Ghostbusters.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. Yep, I'm Old Pops. I'm here. Yes, it's a Sunday. Things are askew. Things are strange here at the old farm. And it's an opportunity to sit down and chat with you guys and talk to you about Ghostbusters an Empire. And yes, I will open that door and let you guys come in with your takes as we progress through the movie a little bit. Saw it last night. We didn't get in until it was about, I don't know if we got in at midnight or right before midnight. I didn't go to bed till after midnight. Got a chance to see it though, and I didn't necessarily have high hopes for it, so I thought I would just start by giving my perspective. I think the original Ghostbusters is just a classic. It gets better with age. I think other than like the special effects, aging. I know we're over 40 years. Holy cow! We're right at 40 years, right? 84. It's a great movie. It holds up so well. And Ghostbusters 2 was such a letdown. It has not aged well. It's just not a great film, and I kind of stand by that. And then there's this alternate universe where somebody somewhere thought this fan fiction film in 2016 should be made. Afterlife I thought was a satisfactory end to the story arc. Right, you basically got sort of a nice wrap up for Spengler and the family and different things that had happened and gone on, and so. It's not great, but it's not bad. I'm gonna put Afterlife at a solid 3 out of 5, maybe 3.5. Depends on how much of a nostalgia fan you are of the franchise, where you'll bump it up a little bit more from that. And then we get to Frozen Empire. Basically, the premise is very simple, right? New ghost, very powerful ghost, basically an ice ghost, right? Going to rule the world, destroy the world, whatever it is with ice. That's kind of what was in the trailers. You have cool special effects. They tease and reveal massive amounts of info and cameo. So it's not as though I have to even worry about some of the spoilers because they're in the trailers. So I don't know what you guys don't want me to say. All the original Ghostbusters are in it again. Patton Oswalt, different characters are in it. And you're like, okay, here we go. So that's pretty much what the movie was. It was pretty predictable, a lot of fan service. There were a lot of things that you're supposed to just be made happy by. And for me, the big setback was not a lot of story. I've seen a couple people who praise the movie, and I guess I'll need them to kind of come in and help me figure out what it is that they liked about the movie so much, because I did not. So movie opens with sort of this quick little scene with the firehouse, and you have sort of a flashback sequence with people being frozen to death, and this person or entity or someone in this armor clutching this orb and chanting something. It's 1904, and that's the firehouse is where these people have come from, and they're kind of like a precursor to the Ghostbusters, but they're firemen. I don't My wife thinks they connected the dots way better than I thought they did. But all right, so put that in the back of your mind because we kind of get back to that, but we don't really get back to that. And if you don't want spoilers, that's fine. I mean, we'll kind of ease into some of the bigger spoilers. This is more like story structure stuff, like where are they now kind of thing. And that's kind of like the first hour of the movie. It is a long, slow process to get to things happening. Like, I just couldn't believe. So they have the characters from Afterlife. So you have Paul Rudd's character, Gary, and then Carrie Coon's character, the mom, and the two kids, right? Finn Wolford is 18 now. And then, of course, the main character, McKenna Grace, is still a teenager, only 15. And they're there basically chasing ghosts, racing through the city, New York City, in Ecto 1. And they're after it's like a blue, it looks like almost like a blue Chinese dragon ghost. Basically, it's a sewer ghost or whatever. And just like in Afterlife, they're not particularly good at this yet. They're crashing into things, they're destroying things, and long story short, it creates a lot of tension in the city because not everybody's real thrilled with the fact that they're destroying everything. And then you have this like really bloated exposition about what happened in Afterlife. They literally stand around and then just start telling you about all of these key elements of Afterlife. And it's so on the nose, I could not get my head around how bad it was. Like, remember when I was teaching your teacher and we did this and almost died and blah, blah, blah. And remember this? And it was like, oh, man. But they cut away when they're talking to the now mayor. And again, I don't know if he was in the trailer, so I guess it's a little bit of a spoiler. But so Walter Peck, who is the EPA guy, is now somehow the mayor. It must be nice to think that makes sense in Hollywood. I don't know why you would do that. I don't know why you would just not bring in Walter Peck as now like the director of the EPA. Like, he brings them in like, oh, now we can get you Ghostbusters. You know what I mean? Like, having a mayor chastising the Ghostbusters about, you shucks, you kids, you're destroying personal property. You got to knock it off. And to have Walter Peck show back up again, it seemed like it would have made more sense. And poor Bill Atherton, he does a fine job. I actually like Bill Atherton. I think he's great in Die Hard, and some of it obviously Real Genius and things like that. But just makes it just, there's like, this is the subtleties of this movie. Like, if you are a nitpicker, this movie is going to drive you out of your mind. And then once you see it, you're not going to be able to unsee it. I think the problem with this movie is its legacy. Once it lands on streaming and physical, is going to be a disaster for it. Like, a movie can be like okay or not particularly great, but then when you start nitpicking it and it starts completely crumbling, that's kind of like we've seen with like phase 4 and 5 of Marvel. Like, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it turns into a complete disaster, in my opinion. So that was one of it. And then again, this heavy-handed exposition, and to me, it was the first glance of one of the film's biggest problems. And I don't get this because I heard someone say pretty positive things about the film. I watched it this morning, and I don't think Paul Rudd is the problem. I think the writers are the problem, because I think Paul Rudd was Paul Rudd. He didn't have he wasn't given an opportunity to sort of like have that Paul Rudd swagger, Paul Rudd charisma and humor and things like that. He didn't even seem like Gary from Afterlife. And Gary in Afterlife was like a scientist dude who was really inquisitive. He was a fan of the Ghostbusters, fan of science. And instead he played like bad driver. He's like crashing into things and reacting to stuff all the time, and then awkwardly trying to figure out what his role is in this new faux family that they have going on. I don't know what to say with that. So that's kind of how it kind of lends itself to kind of set up the pretense of who these characters are before we get to the science and the villain and all that kind of stuff. So the beginning of this is just like, let's pick up where Afterlife left off. So the four of them are doing Ghostbuster stuff. The mayor's mad. So the result of that is that now the main character, Phoebe, who's again the main character, is put in timeout. She's underage, so it's like our child endangerment insinuations, all that kind of stuff, right? Now, my brain's immediately snapping. Like, I'm we're only like a few minutes into the movie. Let me see where I'm at in my movie. Because I did, sure, yeah, yes. There's a newscast that breaks away and shows you like a picture of Harold Ramis and old Ghostbusters footage and all that. But at the end of the day, yeah, I just don't care. I just didn't care about all that because my brain's going, wait a minute. The reason that these people are in New York is because Winston has a whole bunch of money and he has the firehouse and he's going to restore Ecto 1. He's the money man. So I'm assuming he's going to help pick up the tab on some of this personal property stuff that's going on. But we don't really have any allusion to any of that. I don't know. I'll keep going here in a minute. Let me say hello to Decepticon. Hey, brother. Hope you're doing well, my friend. What's going on? Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, I'm kind of getting my feet wet going again, streaming and doing some stuff regularly and things like that. And this one I just couldn't really get out of my head. So I only care for Beetlejuice 2 and Dear Satan, and Jack Black as the devil. Okay. We saw the trailer for Beetlejuice, the Beetlejuice 2 movie. I had the same kind of apprehension I had with this one. It's sort of like I don't know and trust that they can do it right, but it doesn't look bad. And actually, Keats looks good as Beetlejuice still. And I mean, Keats is still a boss. Let's be honest. I mean, he was killing it in the Flash movie. He's the best part of the Flash movie. And if you've seen that clip of the Oscars where they're like, there's a quick little clip of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. And there's a quick little thing where they're trying to jab at Keats, and Keats is just sitting there like a boss. So I'm with you on seeing Beetlejuice. I don't know how I feel about it or expectations. I have pretty moderate expectations for that. So let's see, Monkey Jeebus. My glasses are on, and yet I cannot see. So I don't understand where my distance is going to need to be with this new studio setup. So bear with me here. Winston saved up all his convention money to fund the Ghost, but he might have because yeah, he's a money man, but that doesn't make sense so they're being chastised by there. So again, if you don't think about it, you can kind of keep going and have some fun, fan service it, whatever, ride the wave. Yeah. So anyway, hope you've been good getting geared up for Fan Expo, but all I know is Keith is AG. Okay. Yeah. For me, I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to get to. Again, we've had a lot of stuff going on. If you've caught any of my videos or my live stream, I was kind of catching everybody up on like the work change and being able to stream and different things like that. So a lot of changes. So I don't know where I'm at on that. Hoping to get to some stuff here in the next couple months, especially now that we're post-wedding. So Chris Persia, there he is. How you doing, brother? How are you in the Great White North? Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I saw Ghostbusters kind of last night into this morning because we got home so late. So I thought I would instead of doing a review, to sit and just chat with you. Mrs. Pops is resting. Here we go. So again, this doesn't take up a lot of screen time, but my point is it slogs along. Because the first real conflict to actual story is they catch that sewer ghost. And it sets up the containment unit issue, which is going to be a driver in the story. And that is the fact that the containment unit, it presumably is just full. It's just full of ghosts. Now, what's odd is the way we have seen the firehouse in Afterlife, or the premise that Ghostbusters sort of like fell apart as was discussed in Afterlife. It's like, well, then who's been taking care of the freaking containment unit? Didn't Spengler or Ray or anyone remotely give a thought to what was happening? Like, it's just, these guys were so genuinely concerned about public health in Ghostbusters. They were in conflict with the EPA guy, with Peck, over the containment unit. And now we're supposed to believe they just left it to its own device. It's just sitting there, getting full. No one cares. That's kind of how it starts. And like I said, I want to touch on one more thing with this relationship between Carrie Coon's character, the mom, and Gary. Because they're not engaged as far as we can tell. And she does not, I don't know. I was discussing this with Mrs. Pops on the drive home. And I think, because she was terrible, she thinks that she doesn't look the right age. They're probably about the same age. She thinks that she looks older. I think she doesn't seem, or she's not acting or instructed to act as though she's remotely attracted to Paul Rudd's character. There's one quick comment about what happened in the last movie and blah, blah, blah. And we hooked up, fist bump. And you're like, it was so cringy. There was no genuine chemistry, love, flirtation. You didn't feel like they remotely like each other in some ways. And there's no like addressing the elephant in the room of all this family tension of why is Gary just not bending the knee? And where's all of his money? Like, where is his, does he have a real job or what? It's just not addressed. So that's our first, and literally this is where it starts to plot, because it goes from being like 8 minutes well into like 10, 15 minutes. And then you start to have your first, where are they now moment, which is Ray. And so I'll say this about Ray is Aykroyd still loves doing Ghostbusters. Aykroyd is Ray. He appears to be, he's a fan of the occult. He loves doing this kind of stuff. You can see he loves doing this kind of stuff. And that's the best part. Now, I have a hard time understanding why Ray, who is doing a podcast show with Podcast, the funny kid from Afterlife. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with what comes later in the movie, where it's sort of like insinuated or kind of you get a feel that Ray's not part of any of this Ghostbusters talk. He's not part of Ghostbusters activity. He has anything to do with the firehouse, whatever. And I'm like, it makes no sense why Ray would not want to be involved with things. So that's my take on it. So they should have brought in the lawyer forcing the Ghostbusters to let all the ghosts free for violating their rights. Yeah. I think that this could have been, and just like I said, there was no reason to not have a different mayor and then bring Peck in and have Peck as a new hoity-toity whatever. They just wanted to have Peck in the movie, but they didn't really know what to do. So we'll just make him mayor. It makes no sense that he would be mayor. It's kind of weird how he'll just show up at some random place. He doesn't have any of the, remember how in Ghostbusters, the mayor always had like toadies around him in the background, like mayors do? I don't know that ever it never felt real. Bill Atherton just showed up to a scene. Like they busted the ghost of someone who was rich and their lawyers are the Ghostbusters. Oh, okay. I think, again, I'm going to try to stick with the premise of what they were going for, because I don't think anything was like horrible. Like, this is one of those things where the idea of a movie isn't terrible and the execution is not always bad. Many of the special effects and many of the elements in this movie actually are pretty good. So it's like Dawson in Jurassic Park versus Jurassic Dominion. Yeah, a lot. This felt a lot of that sort of problem. I don't know, did you see this or not? Let me know. It felt very much kind of like they're just plucking things out of previous movies, but they didn't really think it through. So how would Dawson go from point A to this? And it's like, okay, well, I just did. And you're like, okay. Ray not being part of things felt, as the movie goes on, it feels even more awkward because he has to be a part of things in order for them to find a path to defeating the big baddie. So why would he not be involved with training Gary? And my opinion, Gary would be infatuated with Ray, the uber scientist that knows all of this, like Ghostbusters tech and the science behind it, would be teaching Gary. Like it seems like this is the baton, and to the Spengler and spending time with Phoebe. Instead, he's off with podcasts and it appears to be just back at his store at Ray's Occult, not actually out into the field or anything. So there's it's done for last because they basically have this podcast where people bring in possessed items, and that's the get. It goes into the story at least a little bit. And then it ultimately sets up the fact that we get this is 18 to 20 minutes in or so is when we get I'm just going to have a full confession. I cannot stand. Make sure I try to pronounce his name right. Kumail Nanjiani. He's the Indian dude. He's in Eternals, and he's been in a lot of stuff. He's kind of like a hot commodity to these people. I personally can't stand this guy. It doesn't work for me at all. Now, there are moments that he's funny. He's given the good joke, and he delivers on that joke. But he comes into Ray's with a box of crap, and it's supposed to be like occult type stuff his grandmother had. And Ray's fishing through, and he's like, I want $30 for the whole lot. And then Ray's like infatuated with the orb. He's like, okay, well, how about $50? How about $60, right? So again, the only issue I had with the scene, again, if you don't think about it, it works fine. If you think about it, okay, well, Ray would always be cautious of things that he identifies as possibly having psychic kinetic energy, right? The PKE meter basically just goes haywire. So Ray, to me, I wouldn't think would be so haphazard. He wouldn't just open it up. He wouldn't just expose everyone else. He wouldn't put the whole. Now, if it was an accident, he accidentally opened it up, or he was reading it, and next thing you know, it starts moving. Okay, that would be different. Not how they did things. That is not how they did things, like at all. So again, it was trying to introduce this Kameo character into our lives. Well, I don't even know his name. All right, let me get his name so I can stop. I can refer to him by the proper stuff. Nadim. Yeah, Nadim. They're just trying to introduce Nadim and make him part of things. And I'm not saying we didn't need Nadim. It's the fact that it should be more about Ray too. And we don't really get like a balance here. And then, so as the movie kind of progresses from there, you end up into like what the subplots are going to be for the different characters. And I struggle a lot with them not really having thought out like interesting story arcs for everyone. So Phoebe's story arc is she's been kicked off the Ghostbusters because she's too young. And everyone just says like really frivolously silly, sort of almost condescending, oh, you'll be 18. You have a whole life to live. Like, okay, this kid was the uber nerd who had no friends, who tries to tell puns, does whatever. And there's one in that opening sequence I was telling you about where they're driving through the city, and she has one, and she does the eye, the whole thing from Afterlife, and it is so flat and bad. It is terrible. She never does it again. She never tries to tell a joke again. That's the type of fan service. They'll try to do something like that, and to me, it falls very flat or doesn't quite fit the vibe with what should be happening. Her story arc then becomes like teen angst. Like she needs to figure out what she needs to do. She's our main character, right? So she ends up taking her chess set to like a park and sets up the chess pieces, and she's going to play chess. Now, I actually like this. I thought the chess pieces are going to be moving, and you feel like it's going to be something that's going to involve her grandfather, right? And instead, there's a new ghost, and the ghost is Melody. She's another teen girl, and it's basically this interaction, like, why aren't you freaked out? Why are you whatever? And Mrs. Pops is correcting me because she says it was better than I said it was. I thought the dialogue was terrible. Phoebe didn't feel like Phoebe. Phoebe would have been like, yeah, you're not my first go around with a ghost, but it's the way it was delivered, it didn't feel quite right. Like, it just, it's not my first board game with a ghost. I don't know. It just felt like, it just feels like where they want to go and the path to get there. No one in the room is like, that seems clunky. My character wouldn't say this, or my character would say it like this, or how about they try this, or whatever. So anyway, that's kind of how I felt. And then you sort of just kind of jump into the major, I don't want to say twist, but another complication to the story that makes no sense. So we cut back to the family and the firehouse and all the shenanigans that are going on with the firehouse. Winston is going to take them to his other location. So yes, the containment unit may be full, but guess what? Winston, with all of his money and all of his plans, has a backup plan. He has a whole completely different facility. And you're like, what? What on earth is happening? In one moment, you're telling us how much the firehouse matters to everything. It's the key to everything, but you have a whole other facility. And he talks about how there's a comment made about how long it would take to transfer the ghost from the firehouse to the new facility, like years of trap by trap or whatever. And again, as far as we can tell, Ray is not involved. Makes no sense. I don't know how Winston would be the science person to be doing all of this. And instead, he has just a couple of random. There's comments about team because they pull out like a map and the whole thing, and it's like you have one pinhead guy that I guess wanders around through the movie a couple times, and this is where Lucky is. Now, Lucky, she was our POC checkbox from Afterlife that evidently she also migrated to New York with them, but she's not really been around them because when Finn Wolfel's character sees her and hugs her, it's like they hadn't seen each other forever. But it was never played for chemistry or romance again. It was more like, just great to see you again. But as far as I could tell, there really was no team. There was no army of researchers. There's no lab coat people. There's just it's this massive facility that's going to hold a bunch of dangerous ghosts. They're doing, quote, research on. all these different things, and it's Winston, a Pinhead, and Lucky. And I'm like, what on earth? And it's more about, let's just go around the room and introduce a bunch of ghosts. So they've got one called the Possessor. Now, I hated the Possessor. I understand why they did it, but I can't stand the Possessor ghost. This was terrible. So, if any of you guys have seen this already, let me know. If you have no desire to see it, totally get it. And yes, we are heavy into spoilers because now we're going to start transitioning into actually like things starting to move. We're still not very far into the movie. I know this seems, it's like 30 minutes or so, I think, according to my notes. Try and follow along here. It's not, trust me, I felt like it slogged along forever. That first hour to me felt like forever. So, the Possessor ghost is like this little red dot that moves around and can possess an inanimate object. And you're like, okay. So it was a super, super cheap CGI gimmick to make my Dr. Pepper bottle attack me, or this pizza box start moving around the room, or this chair move, or a tricycle roll around. Like I was like, okay. I knew exactly how bad it was going to be, and it was exactly that bad or worse through the whole movie. Maybe that's not for everybody. I get it. And they have like the cutesy ghost head looking thing that spews the slime. Almost felt like it was just done for stuffed animals or Happy Meal toy. Then they have like the demonic weird one, which I thought was actually kind of cool. I thought this would have been a chance, and maybe there are. Maybe people at home, you guys know real Ghostbusters better than I do. You're like, some of these are from real Ghostbusters, because that to me would have made more sense. But they would be in the firehouse containment, not in this containment. Don't know why they're picking and choosing their battles, but that's how they throw everything together. Again, if you've seen it and want to talk about it, I'd love to have you guys give me your take on it. And if you don't want to see it at all, I totally get that as well. So this is where, and this kind of goes on for a while, and it's basically just a whole bunch of like plot and comment dump, where you end up with like, we have this machine and it can like separate the ghost from its entity, or we can take the soul out of something, and hey, pay attention, audience, we're going to use this later on. And that's all this does in this whole sequence. So literally we're now into, let me try to see where I'm at. Yeah, we're way into the like 30 to 40 minute range, and we're getting to the point where it's start putting the orb breaks the PKE meter and all of that, and now it's like going to be brought here, and of course it acts haywire as well, and it creates like a rift and breaks where the containment unit or in the firehouse is. So it's just stuff happening, but we only still get teenage friendly ghost. We don't get anything with the plot yet. So teenage friendly ghost still meets Phoebe. Phoebe, again, plot point issue. This is one of Pop's pet peeves. Okay, let me lean in so people in Hollywood can understand. Plot points don't work for me when they exist only if the character is going to lie or not tell anyone. So the plot point about female teenage ghost only works because she does not tell anyone about it until later on. So this is a typical thing that a lot of them will do. It's like they'll keep a secret to themselves, endanger everyone around them. They'll keep, they're afraid they're going to, upset someone or whatever. So I didn't think you needed to know, or I didn't, whatever. That's what the Phoebe teenage ghost girl does story arc. It's like, it only works because she doesn't tell anybody. No one. And again, it's like Ray, we keep it Ray out. It's so discombobulated from reality and what we would actually do. Back to the program. All right. Hey, Dean Krantz. Hope you're doing well, brother. Yeah, I'm just kind of talking through this movie. Massively disappointed. And the worst part is, and maybe you guys hopefully are picking up on this, is I feel like there's such a good movie in there, and it's a gobbledygook. I feel like Jason Reitman did his send-up piece, his homage to his dad, Harold Ramis. Boom, Afterlife's done, and the studio made a lot of money. It's called Ghost Corps, right? The sub production company within Sony or whatever. We got to do a whole bunch of Ghostbusters and IP. Everybody loves Ghostbuster stuff, whatever. Okay. However, you have to tell a story. And the story isn't that the ghost is bad or the premise is bad. It's the fact that you have all this other stuff that has to work for this to make sense in our world. We have to create this fan. Now we're on like our fourth movie. So we need to make sense of the fact that there's certain things that operate in this world. So, all right. So at this point, now we're getting close to like the 45-minute to an hour mark because we have teenage girl ghost and all that. And we get to, there's part 2. We get to another guy. I wrote it down, so maybe I missed the first time it happened. So there's a noise in the attic. And part 2, it comes around this time. This is the brother. This is Finn Wolfhard's character. Let me look that up. What is his name? Trevor. Trevor goes in the attic, and there's a mountain, and I mean a mountain, like a heap, like a 4 or 5 foot, 3 to 4 foot high heap of like candy wrappers, food wrappers, whatever. It's in the attic. Goes in the attic. Who is it, everyone? It's Slimer. Okay. First time Trevor does it, Slimer comes out, blows through him, and you can see the pause where they go, he wants to say he slimed me, but they don't do it. Instead, he just lets slime come pouring out of his mouth. Okay. They do it a second time. Now, and he rigs it up like he's trying to bait him with like Cheetos or something like that. And the setup is fine. The problem is they still don't deliver anything. And I don't know why Gary didn't walk in and say, "Oh, dude, he slimed you," or something. I mean, just this movie is like that. It's like even when they set things up and they put the ball on the tee, they hit the tee and not the ball. It's like it's just never quite 100%. They give you the fan service, they give you pieces of what you want, but it's never quite on point. So the orb and the story around the orb starts to unpack itself with Ray, and there's some investigation with Najim. So Ray, I don't know why this works, but this is what they were doing. Ray decides he needs help interpreting the ball, and he's going to go to the library to see this person that would know this language. It's a dead language. How would you know this language? Okay. And then Najim is going to be interrogated or interviewed by none other than Peter Venkman, right? Bill Murray's character. Now, Bill Murray, I know people, I saw a couple of people comment on this movie after we saw it. So this morning I watched a couple of reviews. A lot of people have praised Bill Murray, Venkman being Venkman, the kind of thing. I actually disagree. This felt more like Hollywood thinking that they get Peter Venkman. Peter Venkman still always seemed like he had a good heart. It seems like we've lost Peter Venkman. Peter Venkman doesn't seem, I don't know how to explain it. I just don't. I really don't. It was fine. Bill Murray looks old, so that sort of smarmy Venkman humor seems weird on the old dude compared to the young dude who was kind of charming. So that's part of it. He is a scientist and knows some stuff, and he is played as even a bigger Rube and ignorant than he was in the original movies. So I don't quite understand how to fix all of that. But it's our first taste of the fact that Najim is the, quote, fire master. He can move fire. I know. Just bear with me. We'll get there, I guess. And Ray's going to go to the library and do this research because he knows a guy. And the guy turns out to be the Patton Oswalt character. Now, Patton Oswalt was in the trailer. So we knew Patton Oswalt was in it. And when I saw the trailer and I started to piece together what the story was, I was like, oh, well, Patton Oswalt is going to be a bureaucrat. He's going to be, Mayor Peck. He's going to be Walter Peck's do-boy, right? He's going to be the equivalent of Peck in this movie. Peck was just a cameo or whatever. It's going to be Patton Oswalt. That is not the case at all. Patton Oswalt, no, I kid you not. You're not going to believe how bad this is. Patton Oswalt plays a bigger occult guy than Ray. It's Ray's go-to guy on languages because he has like the office within the library and then goes down into the secret library. It's like we're supposed to be Patton Oswalt is the uber occult guy. It's so poorly cast. Why did they want Patton Oswalt in this movie? Because he doesn't look the part, doesn't act. He basically just plays Patton Oswalt. He plays the exact same version of Patton Oswalt, who's just always walking around, thinking that he's funny, thinking that he's charming, thinking that he's interesting. Now we're supposed to believe he's also smart and smarter than Ray, which is absurd. Okay. I don't know why we didn't have something what I actually don't think we needed any of this. I think they should have just had this part about Phoebe instead of having this. Phoebe's so obsessed with, teenage girl ghosts that she's not really Phoebe, the smart, inquisitive Phoebe. And I think between her and Ray, them solving this together would have made more sense. And then maybe with podcast, because podcast is on that trip too. And here's the fan service, right? Ray has a secret way of getting there. He does a little thing, click, 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 click. He has an Ecto C, which is like a motorcycle with a sidecar. Okay. They show up at the library. Guess what? It's the library. It's the curator, the person there is the same guy from the first movie. And then when they're walking around, you see the librarian down the aisle, the ghost. You see that? We end up with Patton Oswalt. And it's terrible. It's just as bad and boring. And you just feel like it's Patton Oswalt. It's like you can't even immerse yourself in the believability like at all. It's only a few minutes. I get it. But I don't understand why we're supposed to believe that he is better at this than Ray. So that's how all that plays. And again, the thing on Najim is they put the colander on his head during the interview. So again, callbacks to the other movie and all that kind of stuff and things like that. So, and this is just a massive exposition dump of what's actually happening with the creature. But this is over an hour we're over an hour, and I put, so it's sometime between an hour and an hour and 15. So that's about how far we are. We're finally getting to conflict. So when they leave the library, again, there's a possessor ghost. Remember the possessor ghost? The stupid idea red dot ghost I told you about? It escaped from that lab thing, right? And in the process of doing that, it's with them in the library and it jumps around, follows them. And long story short, there's like a shootout and they destroy a piece of the library and Phoebe's in trouble again. And now Gary gets to be the jerk that he thinks he needed to be, surrogate dad. I don't know. You haven't really actually put a ring on her finger to be called dad, but okay. Anyway, so all of this is just clunky. It is slow. We barely have anything. We have like moments of cool stuff happening, and when they're happening, they're not bad. And again, all the stuff with the proton packs and those special effects are fine. We'll get to some special effects. There's only a couple things I think were bad. Most of it was very, very good. And then we have this quick little scene, and this again, the scene that doesn't make any sense at all. It's Winston gets in Ray's face, like, "Don't you see what you did here, Ray? She could have got hurt. We're too old for this. Our golden years. We should be passing this along." It's like, well, hold on, time out. Winston, you might be bankrolling some of this, but what are you doing? Like, I don't understand. The kids are not trained. Gary's played for laughs and not being able to drive. The closest thing to them being ready is the fact that they come up with like new ideas for traps. Like in Afterlife, they had the trap that was on like the robot that would drive around. And this one, they had a drone. Again, if we don't think about it, it all just feels fine. It goes by okay. But the moment we start thinking about it, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it makes no sense why Ray is not involved with much of this. Why Ray is not connected to these decisions and tech and all that. So you end up with all this nonsense before it's more like Ray and the Firemaster and Najim. And it's played for laughs. Najim, you can do it. Light the candle. They set a candle and the flame, because he can do this and the candle will move and all that. So we start to have callbacks between Patton Oswalt's scene and this scene explaining that the person in that scene in the opening of the movie with the fireman was actually his grandma in this armor thing, chanting the chants that makes the orb thing go back together and trapping this entity, the frozen god demon thing. Okay? Because it don't really matter. They could have called it whatever. It's good. It's called Gorak or whatever it is. I don't know. Who cares? Let's see what it says. Gorak? I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just disposable ghost. That's what Mrs. Pop says. Like it's just, yeah. Patton Oswalt is the picture perfect Hollywood impression of what a nerd looks like. That is why they cast him as a nerd. He is neither smart nor nerdy. He's mean-spirited. Yeah, no. I mean, I totally get that. Trust me. I mean, the backlash and the reaction of seeing the trailer was pretty widespread. That most of us were like, "Oh, Patton Oswalt, really? Why would y'all do that?" It's even worse than this because they try to play it up like he's smart. Like, and the idea that he would be smarter than Ray is so dumb. Like, I don't understand. He just, I don't know. It was so. Put all that together. That's supposed to be why we had the scene in the beginning of the movie. Yeah, Mrs. Pops is trying to convince me on the drive home how this works way better than I thought it did. I thought it was terrible. I could not get my head around how any of this connected well. I could see the firehouse connection, whatever. But now basically we're at a place now where Nadim is a fire master and it's supposed to matter. That's kind of where we're at. And then you have Girl Ghost, and it's some sort of weird energy between her and Phoebe. And I'm not trying to say it's romantic exactly, but it's almost like Phoebe's doing like some sort of weird teenage, I wonder what, maybe I shouldn't live type thing. Maybe I could be a ghost type thing. She's going to hijack Winston's machine to pull her soul out. So for 2 minutes, she'll be on the same plane with this ghost. But of course, when she does, the ghost can use it as an opportunity to get himself out. And that's kind of what happens. If you're thinking that doesn't make a lot of sense, this movie is full of a lot of word salad that just kind of explains those things. So it's supposed to make sense. Again, I stand by when this movie lands on streaming and people have a chance to watch it and really dissect it, this is really, really going to fall apart. That's what the problem with this movie is going to be. It's not that it's not tolerable in its moment and people can come away with this going, well, this movie's not too bad. I think when you start thinking about it, this makes no freaking sense. It makes no freaking sense. They set it up with this brief scene with the stupid little mini Stay Puft Marshmallow guys. Okay, remember the first Afterlife when they had the Walmart scene and they had like the little mini Stay Puffs and they're all running around hurting and killing one another? It was really kind of awkwardly funny. Like it's supposed to be funny, but it's more like just uncomfortable. There's more of that, and they have them in the research lab that the creature kind of controls. So it's all of that points to he can control Phoebe. And she can say the spell to open the orb, and then it sets forth the motion for the actual action in the movie, which takes place, I believe, over the next 30 minutes. So literally we had to sit through over an hour and 15, because I wrote an hour and 15. For all this takes place. And it's just like, okay. And you get this kind of dark sequence with it coming to life and becoming what it is. And I don't disagree with Mrs. Pops, who thought it was a little too dark, but it is what it is. I'm fine with it. It's okay. It's just that now we end up with like the sequence we get from the trailer where it's sort of like the ice is coming into the city and attacking everyone. It's freezing people on the beach and things like that are happening. And it's attacking what it thinks is a fire master, which is played for a gag by someone running like a store. I think it's a smoke shop called Fire Master. The real fire master, of course, is not Gene. And then we end up having to go down to basically like a big confrontation because Peck has taken all their stuff, and it's all the typical Ghostbusters tropes. So the last act is where we actually get a Ghostbusters movie. We had to sit through an hour and 15 minutes to get to this point where everyone's got to come together. Everyone's got to suit up. Everyone's got to have a backpack. And we're going to confront giant frozen ice god, basically. Excuse me, which is funny only because they also include Annie Potts. So there's a quick little comment from Bill Murray, which I think you see in the trailer. Did I write down that we saw in the trailer or not? Anyway, I don't know. But Janine, she dresses up too. And then there's like a little comment about Melnitz being suited up or whatever. And it's cute. And she has one on. And they give her like this wrist contraption, and it's like I don't even know if she fires the thing or not, but they're all there. And now Ghost God, when he first got out, or Ice God, Lucky was there. Lucky was in the lab when he gets out, and she tries to use it with her proton pack machine thing, and it freezes and falls to the ground. I don't understand why she survives, because they kind of play up the fact that he freezes people to death, but presumably she makes it okay. I don't think she's clearly told everyone what happened, because they all basically just repeat the exact same thing. And right as we get to this battle sequence. So even though it's only 30 minutes to the rest of the movie, to me, it felt like forever. It felt so long. I don't know how it took so long to get here, and I don't know why it's so clunky now that I'm in it. And I think it's just because the humans aren't really humaning right, and there are no real jokes, and everything is just sort of like played for awkwardness rather than funny or hysterical. Now, Phoebe has to save the day. Phoebe's our main character, right? So as Ice God is freezing the proton pack particle beams and those kinds of things, she has this random thing about brass, I think is what she says. And then when we see her literally cutting a piece of the pole off from the firehouse and she's mixing stuff up for this different, she's doing something with her pack, which is weird because even Mrs. Potts pointed out that when Najim later on, he goes down the fire pole, but anyway, whatever. So she has a magical pack. He's figuring out he can shoot fire. And we have a big showdown where basically she and Nadim shoot him at the same time. And they get the proton thing open, and that's how they end it. He doesn't have any, and maybe that's the biggest problem with this movie, is there's no time at all for us to dislike this villain. He's in an orb most of the movie. He's not even out. He's not walking the streets, freezing things. There was no setup to that. It's just like he's just in this scene, he's in that scene. There's no like real setup to him. Because imagine like a Voldemort meets Hades from the Disney Hercules movie. It's kind of like this look that he has with like he puts these horns back in, and he has like this cloak thing, and the ice could be coming out of it, whatever. But there's no real setup of him walking around doing those kinds of things and stuff like that. So I just thought all of that, everything felt very, very clunky. So yeah, anyway, at the end of the day, I think the movie, first of all, it looks pretty good. There was a couple of times they used CGI on the Ecto-1. They were quick shot of it moving away, and they clearly didn't actually shoot it with a practical on location. They actually just filled it in. So it was a shot they missed or they didn't have planned for. And they used CGI, and it was very noticeable. There's like twice. Now, again, we're talking about like 2 seconds, but if you're watching Ecto-1 as I am every moment, it's very noticeable. Excuse me. And then there's the lack of humaning. I don't even understand where, like, if you remember, like Winston had that team, they had like this toady guy, and he's completely irrelevant. Lucky, who showed up, whatever, she's completely irrelevant. And even Trevor, he could drive at the end, so they're going to go out. They give him the key. Great, that's his story arc. His story arc is he wasn't allowed to drive. Now he can drive. He's going to learn from Gary. He was a bad driver. That was the gag, I guess. I don't know. Phoebe makes a comment calling Gary dad. So I guess that was the payoff for that. The mom is still like a smarmy, not particularly likable, not mean per se, but just not showing any attractiveness or bond to Gary or the kids really. Just everything about this just felt very bland, very generic. To me, it's a 2-star movie, 2 out of 5. That's where I kind of land this movie. If it lands on streaming that you have for free, fine. Give it a thought and let me know what you guys think, or you guys think I'm completely crazy or not. I thought Afterlife did some stuff right and hit some heartstrings, and it felt like a good closure to things. This feels like I'm in the Ghostbusters universe. Like it feels Ghostbustery, but there's no heart. There's hardly any humor. Special effects are okay. Even the ghost concept's not bad. It's just like you got to spend some time on the ghost. You can't just have me go to Patton Oswalt and have him start telling me crap. I don't freaking care about Patton Oswalt, right? I don't care about this randomness of you just throwing things against the wall. And I feel like that's what we got. We got a script from Jason Reitman, or at least a draft or something. And then he either just didn't want to do it or whatever, and it got passed off, and it became a studio project that turned into this. And I don't exactly know how and why that came. I wanted to look and see if I was looking at the notes, because it was in December that in December 22, they said that Gil Kenan, he's the guy that's going to take over. And he did that terrible Poltergeist remake, which was just god awful. But he just seemed like he didn't get Ghostbusters. Like it doesn't feel quite right. I also felt like there were some music moments that are missed. And there's a lot of effort to just keep Gary makes a comment about who you're going to call jokes, and they have the TV commercial stuff pop up or whatever. I just didn't care for it all. Chris, sounds like they should have cut some of the unnecessary characters, focus on the main characters. Joe, yeah, Mrs. Pops couldn't believe how long it was. She was like, okay. I mean, I was happy that she went into this thinking, well, it's less than 2 hours. That's a good thing. But there's so much unnecessary with it, was how she felt. I couldn't agree more now. More and the more I've been thinking about it since we came out of the theater to now, couldn't agree more. I don't even know how much I would keep, because you have just that 30 minutes or so at the end, and you need to set that stuff up well. I think the entire premise of the villain is fine in some theory, but the entire escape from the orb stuff and Phoebe's teenage girl ghost thing and all that, all of that needed to be redone. None of that's remotely interesting. Patton Oswalt does not need to exist. It needs to be a Phoebe Ray thing. Even if it's orchestrated, wouldn't it be better to have more like the Twinkie gag again, right? So it's Winston not being the science genius, watching the geniuses solve the puzzle and being in awe of it, and then coming up with the Twinkie joke. Like, that would have been not I don't think you should say the Twinkie joke, but that's the part that worked. They didn't do anything like that. And there's also just a lot of extra characters. Like, I don't understand the brother if we're not going to do anything with the brother. Like, he doesn't seem remotely interested in the fact that he's a Spengler and would have sort of like some of those genes to be good at any of this. It's just played for a boy that now wants to drive. That was it. Podcast was just podcast. He didn't bring anything to the table in this movie. It was significantly less. I think in the final sequence, he flies the drone. I think he crashes the drone first. That's what this movie is. It's just a bloody mess of stuff thrown against the wall. And we're all supposed to be thrilled that we got a Ghostbusters movie, I guess. And as I've said many points, I hate to be this way, but there's part of me that feels like so much of this stuff, it goes back to Disney Marvel's fault. It goes back to Disney Star Wars. It goes back to Disney. They don't script it right first. They throw stuff against the wall. We'll fix it in post. Rely on CGI in all the bad ways. They have inexperienced people who are not passionate about a project. And it's just cheap. I say cheap. It's not cheap. I meant it doesn't have the gravitas you get from a passionate person. Like, why is Aykroyd not more involved? Like, it just seems like he clearly is enjoying himself. You can see it. There's scenes where he's being Dan Aykroyd. It's so good. And he owns this Ray character. And Winston's not bad. Actually, thinking about the performances, I think I heard someone when they were talking about the movie, they were kind of bashing on Paul Rudd. Somebody else was saying everybody phones it in. I don't know about all that. I just feel like the script's just that bad. I feel like the human's still human like this. I felt like it just wasn't as realistic. Like, we read it aloud and we would shoot it better. I just felt like we could get this to flow better and feel more natural. And I just think everything about it just seems kind of a mess. So, well, I've droned on for almost an hour. Can't thank you guys enough. This is my review. It was like it's easier just to do this than it was to try to. I don't know. Chris says they should have leaned into the cartoon and addressed the containment issues, introducing the ghost dimension, create a portal to dump the ghost into, and that's what the ice god escaped from. Well, that would have been way too easy. That means they would have had to known that. I couldn't agree more. It was so much easier to have a reason on why the orb wasn't in the portal and they had to get him in the portal or something. Like, it would have been easy to come up with something. And I really thought they were going to lean into more like real Ghostbusters type, a lot of different ghosts and things like that. I think we got a couple of new ghosts, but they're like, one's clearly for toys. One's, who cares? I don't know. I don't think this thing, I don't even think the ice demon monster thing really talks much, like really gets any personality through either. Like, who cares? It almost becomes like Thor Dark World, where you just have the dark elf thing and you're like, I could care less if the guy dies or not. Like, all right, whatever. And said 2 freaking words the whole movie that makes any sense to me, that kind of feeling. So tired of 20-30-year-old movie brought back with a modern audience. So whenever I hear modern audience, though, I think more like woke, strong woman, the race swapping, all those kinds of things. I don't think this movie is any different. I don't think this does any of those kinds of things for life. Phoebe is the granddaughter of Spengler, and I'm okay with that. I wish that they would have figured out what they were going to do with Trevor. It makes no sense because he's the grandson of Spengler. I'm okay with that because that's a way of them making it. I want to say woke, but it's a girls that means everything kind of thing in a story that we can make it work. There's no other elements. There's nothing else. Even the mom, she's not girl boss. She's not jury or anything like that. She's just not an appealing person to look at or be around. Like I don't get it. So I don't disagree with your statement. I just don't know that it applies to Frozen Empire. I think Frozen Empire is not really woke at all or anything like that. I think if you thought Afterlife really was or something, then maybe because it's basically just an extension of that story. But I don't think it's really extensively woke or anything like that. It's definitely not as. I mean, AVP was done a while ago, and it's in that same vein of a strong female lead character. Blah blah blah. Okay, fair enough. It's fine. That wasn't that. Trust me, that is not a problem with this movie. It is way other issues with story. Like I said, there's going to be a whole lot of people that come away with this relatively entertained. There's going to be Ghostbuster nerdy people who love Ghostbuster stuff, and they see all these Easter eggs and all this stuff, and they're just going to be so thrilled. The story, though, it's not going to hold up. When it gets really picked apart, when you start doing one of these EFAPs or something like that with people, this movie's going to be way worse than what I've been able to get it to because I don't have it pulled up in front of me. I can't dissect scene by scene or anything like that. I'm just kind of going through like the notes and concepts and things like that. Because I'm sure I've missed 2 or 3 things that I really wanted to talk about at the time and I haven't remembered. So, but yeah, that's kind of it. Yeah, folks, I don't know. I think it is disappointing. I don't know how much money they needed to make. It just got a lot of special effects, so I assume it's a pretty costly project. It got bumped, obviously, a little bit delayed because of the writer's strike and stuff like that. So I don't know if it needs to make a ton of money for things to carry on. They're really about trying to make the Ghostbusters IP a thing. They don't have a ton of IPs to play with. Sony's not like sitting over there with a bunch of stuff that they're trying to develop or whatever. So this is one they really wanted to. And the merchandise and stuff does sell where they had very expensive. I couldn't believe these things. It looks like a popcorn bucket with like the big plastic cup on top, but it had Slimer on top. I think Mrs. Pop said it was like $40 for this thing. I assume, popcorn soda in this thing. But I don't want Slimer on top. I mean, I guess that's the gimmick, but that's not going to sell it to me. Maybe sell it to a kid, but I'm not paying that. That wasn't for me. So yeah, it was. I don't even know where Slimer ends up. Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, they kind of play fast and loose with stuff too. Again, I talked about the word salad because even Ray at the end where he's trying to word salad on why something would work, they have Venkman go, "None of us understand it, Ray. Just make it happen." And I'm like, that's kind of how all of us in the audience feel too. Like we don't even need to know. Like you guys aren't even like trying to make this in a way that we can kind of make sense of it all. It's just a lot of stuff thrown around loosely. Yeah, that's my take on it. So listen, folks, thanks for hanging out. Very impromptu. Might be free a lot more today, so I might end up trying to join or pop on some other shows or something like that. We'll see how that goes. Busy week ahead. If you didn't see my video this morning, dropped in my Watch Your Story this week, to my first one in a while. I had Taylor Reed on with me. It's actually she's my oldest daughter, so you might want to check that out. Kind of some fun childhood stories from her there at the end, so that's kind of fun. So yeah, that was out there. Tuesday, of course, Talk Art. So Slimer Bucket. Yeah, let's see. AMC had Ghost Trap. No, it was not. Maybe the other one did. But not this one. See, a Ghost Trap would be interesting. But no, this was a bucket. It's a big bucket. And then the top was the plastic cup. So I assume you got both. It was like $40 for like the large drink, large popcorn, and its plastic and its special collector container and cup. And I thought with Slimer on top, it was like, ugh, I don't want that. So yeah, they had the same thing for Dune. They still had leftovers, so they're not selling these things. So they had a bunch of them left from Dune, which was very generic looking to me. I thought Dune I don't know what the appropriate thing is for Dune fans. It's not me, but yeah, they had a bunch of them for Dune, and they're already pre-selling the Godzilla ones. And the problem with the Godzilla one is he's so small on it. So you have this cool bucket and a cup, but then his topper seems so. You have this big cup, and he's so small on that topper. I remember like the really bad Iguanazilla movie. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? 1990s. That thing's topper was the size of your hand. It was big. So you're like every kid wanted that thing because it jumps out at you. Godzilla's so small on this thing. You're like, eh. So yeah, not my thing. So anyway, but yeah, Talk Hard Tuesday. We will be wrapping up Halo. We have taken a break from Halo for a couple weeks. So we're wrapping up Halo on Tuesday night. That's 5:30 here Eastern time. We will have more. This week I'll be back with our comic talk with James Mealy. He'll be back. Why is this great comic book? We talk about some good comic books. And then I have a pop talk that'll probably be not this week, but the following week. That will be with James Harris, Ginger Ninja, talking about some different things. That's kind of fun. And I've got another couple interviews and things set up over the next week or so before I get the grandkids. I get the grandkids for about 4 days during their spring break. So I'll be preoccupied doing pop stuff, the real pop stuff, pops with the actual kids. So, but yeah, I put the arm up on this thing. I don't quite have it right. I think I need to move it. See, I got about 5 inches of play right here. So I think I need to move it over just a little bit more because this is like really awkwardly in. I don't like where that is. So we'll have to play with that. This is the first time I use the arm. And I've got to get the mouth guard on it because the mouth guard is not on it right. So things like that will be done. I'll probably work on that today. So, but listen, folks, thank you guys for watching. I'll throw one of my little commercial teases here before I get to the credit. Look at this. I have one of these. Watch.
Who's the ghost with the most? Beetlejuice. Say it 3 times fast and get ready for fun. Beetlejuice is next.
Yeah, it's funny. Always makes me smile. All right, folks. Well, listen, you guys have a blessed day. I will talk to you guys soon. And take care.
Ross, all I do is chill. My life is a thrill, for real, Bob Ross. I be too calm for the drama. You don't wanna cause a problem, I'll solve it, Bob Ross.